Everyone see the screen? Cool. So welcome everyone to the second event of CI Stockholm, and we're very glad to have you here, the ones that came. And oops. My name is Carl, and I'm part of the core team in the Stockholm System Innovation, along with Fredrik and Mikael, who's here today. I can just make a short presentation or introduction of myself. I'm very interested in the system thinking and the practice of doing these workshops and the practical aspects of systems thinking, how we can work with canvases like the one we're going to explore today. And so I've been doing some design thinking and stuff like that. So that's a short introduction of me. Maybe Mikael, you can go. Just a short introduction.
Sure. My name is Mikael. I also have some experience from design thinking, but also leaning into systems thinking, and I also have stronger background in food. I'm a trained chef, and also well, I was brought up on a farm, so I do a bit or two around food and food systems. Some fun facts: I have a hobby farm of mushrooms in a basement in Stockholm, just to spur your imagination. I do read a lot of philosophy as well, so that's me in a brief note.
Great, thank you. And Fredrik, do you want to just do a small intro?
Yes, I do not grow any mushrooms. I do not have the green fingers, but I do work with systems. I work at RISE, Swedish Research Institute, and we have some system innovation projects in sustainable value chains in food, and also in transformation of the Swedish food system. So I'm learning all I can on food right now. So I will venture into mushrooms eventually, hopefully. So we see.
Welcome.
Interesting. And we also have Joss here, who's you can maybe make a small intro if some of you don't know.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Carl. So yeah, I'm part of systems innovation. I work on the website. I'm also with the London Hub, and today I'm going to give a little presentation talking about food systems resilience. I was part of producing a paper we did a couple of years ago on this subject of what's systems innovation in the context of trying to rethink and transform our food systems. So I've done quite a bit of research on that. I'm going to present just a little bit around the aspects of resilience in food systems and more generally what resilience is. But I also, like Mikael, grew up on a farm, and actually I was just at our organic farm with my parents in Ireland until a couple of days ago. Big changes happening there in Ireland in the food system. And these are interesting times, I think. I think a lot of things, when I talk to my parents, like it's quite evident that a lot of things are now kind of up for grabs that weren't even just 20 years ago. There's really a dominant kind of paradigm of conventional agriculture that's really excluded pretty much everything else. Everything else was kind of fringe and marginal, and now that's changing big time. And a lot of things are kind of opening up for questioning, particularly with respect to climate change and all of the kind of changes in the natural environment that are kind of forcing the system to some extent to adapt and evolve and open up to kind of new approaches, similar to the stuff we'll be talking about today. So yeah, good to be here, and I'll let you continue, Carl.
Cool, thank you. And just so we know that everyone is here, maybe they can write where they're from in the chat. So just get a sense of everyone here. That would be nice. Dubai, Finland, Barcelona. Wow. From all over the world. That's so nice. Sweden. All right. Okay. I'm gonna head on. So the intention for today is to investigate if we can find a well-informed question and focus area that can cause a larger change towards a more resilient food system. And I want to emphasize the question here. We're gonna get creative, but we're also gonna just come up with a more well-informed question. And I put Albert Einstein's quote here. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on it, the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. And so that's what we're going to do now today, to find that question. And by the end of the session, we will have hopefully shared our knowledge to gain some insights and ideated an informed question, like I was just saying. And also we experience how to practically work with the leverage point canvas that Joss did. And also remember, this is a very much work in progress. So bear in mind that we're trying stuff out and we're iterating all the time. So we will have some space in the end for feedback. If you have that, that would be very appreciated. But yeah, bear in mind, if it is not perfect, then please let us know how we can improve it. And some pointers for today that could be good that I just found or think is great is that it will be somewhat fast paced, and I will use a timer a lot, and I will be very strict with times. I hope that's okay. It's okay if you didn't have time to finish. It would be nice if everyone can have some fun. If that happens, that's nice. And the chaos might happen. And we're going to be in an exploring mindset a lot. So we will be divergent thinking a lot. But then we will also converge on some insights. And it's also perfectly okay to blank out. We all do sometimes. Maybe I wrote this for myself a little bit because sometimes I blank out. But it's an open environment. We're here to explore. So, and also trusting the process. Like I said before, feedback and improvements are always welcome afterwards. And we're gonna divide you into smaller groups, and that can always be tricky. So my suggestion is that you assign a timekeeper, and also make sure that everyone has time to share if they want to share in the group. And also watch out for untested assumptions, if that's possible. You have to, of course, draw a line somewhere, but we're looking to get some qualitative data here. And the structure is, this intro is taking a bit more than 2 minutes now, but it's okay. And then just like you said, you will talk about resilience in food systems. And then we will go into Miro. It's a collaborational web app. Maybe some of you have heard about it. Is there anyone that hasn't heard about it? Maybe they can write in the chat now or just say something. No? Okay, nice. And then we will have the workshop there. I will give you the link, and then we will wrap up. And this session is set for 90 minutes. So also, yes, me and Mikael is somewhat leading the session, but I will be more focused on the process, and Mikael will, since his background, he will have more focus on the subject, food. And Jos, if you want to share your screen, you can start with your presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Carl. So here we go. We're going to talk about a bit, as I mentioned, about resilience and what that means in the context of food systems. And here we are. So what is resilience itself? I'm going to talk about that. Let me just shrink my screen here. 1 second. There we go. resilience, I kind of contrast it actually to the idea of robustness. I think about robustness as kind of the capacity to resist change. And that's one kind of strategy. You know, when something changes in the environment that a system is dependent upon, it has to do something about that, right? And you can try and resist that. You can try and prevent the changes. And if you're kind of strong enough and a small enough environment and so forth, that's possible. But there's another kind of approach called resilience, which is particularly relevant when you're kind of a small fish in a big sea. And particularly in the world we live in, when there are very big kind of systems changes going on out there in the world that no one actor, no nation state, no organization can actually control or really influence those. So resilience is a term we've seen really kind of move to the forefront over the past, particularly the past year, right? Everyone's talking about it these days, but over the past decade, particularly because of that, the kind of scale of the changes that are underway, and the realization that we can't really control and predict and prevent a lot of those. And we have to learn to adapt to them and build resilience. So resilience is the ability of a system of any kind. It's a very kind of fundamental systems theory concept because it relates to all kinds of systems, you know, social systems and technology. And of course, what we're talking about here, socio-ecological systems. So it's the ability of a system or systems to adapt to changes within their environment so as to maintain critical structure and functionality. So this tree here is obviously experiencing changes in its environment. You know, wind, and might have storms and so forth, and it's got to respond to that in some way. It's got to kind of maintain its structure, or else it's going to break and fall over. And this one here, it could be a very strong tree and try and resist in that way, and that'd be a robustness. But here it's actually kind of adapting to it, right? It's able to bend, it has that flexibility and so forth. And we call that kind of resilience, that capacity to adapt to changes whilst maintaining a certain functionality. And of course, we're talking about that in the context of food systems, but what makes something resilient? What makes it fragile? What are the differences there? And there's many different aspects to that. One is around kind of structure, and you can kind of look at it in terms of the network and integration. Systems that are more integrated are better able to coordinate their parts towards being able to adapt to the changes that are happening. If it's very fractured and disintegrated, then it's not able to kind of act as a whole and adapt as a whole. Integration is an important part. Dependency is an important aspect. If you're very dependent on certain aspects in your environment, that makes you very vulnerable. And diversity, we've probably heard about this. Diversity is an important aspect. When you reduce diversity, a shock can happen in the environment, and then you don't have all the elements can be vulnerable to that because they're all the same. And that means the shock can ripple through the system very quickly. If you have a lot of diversity, some components will be resistant to that shock, and they'll be able to survive and so forth. So these are all aspects that are really important to the resilience in any kind of system, as I said. And just look at it in the context of the food system that we have today. And this question of integration. So the conventional agricultural system that developed over the 20th century has been defined as capital intensive. I mean, this is the kind of best, most succinct kind of summarization I've found of it. It's capital intensive, it's large scale, highly mechanized agriculture with monoculture of crops and extensive use of artificial fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides with intensive animal husbandry. So yeah, this kind of rose. Obviously, it comes out of the Industrial Revolution, but particularly since the Green Revolution in the mid 20th century, this kind of system of mass production, mechanized agriculture has really kind of come to dominate where most of us get our food from these days, right? We're all pretty much dependent on this. And it's actually, as we know, kind of worked to reduce the resilience of the system in many ways. So we're just looking at integrity here. So typically our industrial system is centered on maximizing throughput to reduce unit costs of production via economies of scale. similar to a lot of other industrial systems. You know, that could be education, it could be whatever it is. Looks very much similar, right? What we're trying to do, we're trying to get economies of scale to reduce kind of unit costs, and we centralize things and we standardize them and so forth. And that has huge kind of effects in terms of the resilience of the system. So across many dimensions, the economies of scale that drove industrial agriculture have led to high levels of centralization and specialization. And the idea is that that kind of leads to a fracturing in the system, right? This specialization, it's this reductionist approach where we separate out all the individual parts and we kind of focus on those, so as to specialize on them and get very efficient at doing them, right? And through that, we're able to reduce unit costs and do mass production and so forth. And that's really kind of been the model we've followed. So we end up with a lot of monoculture, right? That's what agriculture looks like. If you go out there and you look at our system, you know, massive grain fields, things like this, it's all one crop in the fields. And that looks kind of normal to us, actually. It's not necessarily normal. We think it's normal because it's a system we live with, but it's very much a product of this kind of reductionist approach. But it ends up, you know, the optimization of parts creates compartmentalization and disintegration of the system, both in terms of the crops and but also in terms of kind of the supply chain and separation of the different functions, right? We have supermarkets for kind of distribution, we have long supply chains. We have farms, mass production farms, and we also have this kind of separation between producers and consumers that we're very kind of familiar with in our modern worlds. And that disintegration, that separation of the consumers and the producers is a key part of this. And it creates a lot of dependency, right? Most of us aren't farmers. Most of us don't grow our food. Most of us aren't like Mikkel growing all our own mushrooms. We are dependent on a food system to give us all that food. So this is the second aspect to it, right? Dependency. And dependency is going to reduce resilience for sure. So 200 years ago, the producers and consumers of food were the same people, or at least they were close neighbors. Between producer and consumer, we have introduced a long string of stranger companies we've never seen, with employees we've never known. And that's kind of the world we live in, and we're all very dependent on that food system. As soon as the supermarket shuts down here, where am I going to get my food from? I'm very much dependent upon it, and that's a key kind of aspect around resilience in the system. And of course, we have these long kind of supply chains because of high levels of centralization and intermediation within the system. That again reduces adaptive capacity, and we've probably seen images like this. This is a tortilla purchased in California. Where does all that food come from? The rice is flown probably from Asia somewhere, 2,726 miles. The onions, wherever they came from, maybe Latin America, 1,304 miles. A tortilla shell, 3,000, so on and so forth. Quite incredible, really, when you think about the supply chain it took to produce that tortilla. It's all over the planet, really, and all the different intermediaries and the processes and the finance and so on and so forth that went into producing that. And that's what I mean by a very kind of fractured system. It's very different from going out into your garden and picking up some tomatoes or something, which is a highly integrated system. Okay, so that's that. And of course, the system is extremely dependent, not just us as consumers, but also the system itself. The food system, we've become more and more dependent on many input variables from the natural environment: water, energy, stable climate, and so forth. And they're really, places like California are really experiencing this at the moment as they run out of water. Basically, their agriculture is drying up, quite literally. And so the system is highly dependent on an input of kind of natural resources that are actually depleting, they're running out. It's also dependent on a very kind of relatively stable environment that's kind of no longer there. So again, that's kind of creating a lot of problems with respect to resilience. And thirdly, the kind of diversity is an important part. Economies of scale are realized through mass production, standardization, which is kind of dumbing down or reducing the diversity. And this is a third aspect to it. 4 companies produce more than 58% of the world's seeds. yet another 4 produce more than 60% of agrochemical farmers' use. 4 companies produce more than 58% of the world's seeds. But this is kind of the graphic that brings it home for me. This is the biomass distribution of mammals on Earth. And you think about what that might have been 6,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, and look at what it is today. 60% of all mammals on Earth are livestock. So they're mostly cattle and pigs. 36 are humans, and just 4% are wild animals. It's those guys up in the top left-hand corner there, the little green patch. That's the wild animals on our planet. The rest are all cows, horses or sheep or pigs or humans. And that's what I mean kind of reduction in diversity. Think what that was, as I say, 100,000 years ago, totally different. We've actually totally sucked out the diversity from that system and put in a lot of beef burgers and pigs and so forth. So, of course, that's led to, as we know, a highly kind of unsustainable situation, both on kind of supply side and demand side. And of course, a lot of these changes that are happening in the environment, and this, as I talked about in Ireland there, this is really starting to be felt, and some big changes are coming along. But how might we, what we're doing today, talk about how might we do something different, right? In terms of integration, how do we develop a system that systematically promotes kind of integration of the supply chain? Because the opposite has happened. It's become more and more disintegrated, more and more distributed on a planetary scale. Something that reconnects and reintegrates producers and consumers, that actually works. It's become more and more disconnected, right? Over the past 100 years, and more disconnected from where our food comes from. How do we do something that actually systematically works in the opposite direction to reconnect those things? And dependency, how do you get a paradigm that is less dependent upon natural resources? Because that's going to have to happen in the sense that we're running out of those natural resources and it's changing. And of course, diversity, something that systematically promotes and builds diversity. So those are kind of questions I'm looking forward to kind of exploring with you today. I really think the food system of tomorrow is going to be a much more holistic one instead of kind of the reductionist one that we've developed. It's going to be kind of multi-dimensional. I don't think it'll be one thing. I think it'll be many things, like vertical farming or rooftop gardening or community gardens or greenhouses or organic farming, and maybe some kind of mass conventional farming that we know today. I think it'll be all of those things. And that's that, guys. I'm looking forward to exploring this topic with you and talking further on it. I'll hand it back to you, Carl.
Thank you, Jos. Really interesting. So, so the challenge question that we're going to look at today is a very general one, but it's how might we develop a more resilient food systems? And for that, we need, we're going to use this canvas, leverage point canvas, as a base for our research and exploration. And basically, this challenge here is how can we create a resilient food system is in the middle, and then we're going to look at the factors, and then look at the constraints and the factors actually, and then from that we will gain some insights, and then we'll create how might we question based on this that we're going to do. So this is not really exploring feedback loops and building stories and stuff like that. This is more of a general overview of how we can find a question that is more scoped than this one. So that is the task for today. So now I'm going to share with you in the chat the link to the Miro board. And let's see, where is that? If you see the chat now, you will have a link. So if everyone can go in there, and we will be greeted with a welcome to the workshop message. And yes, I'll wait for some, 19 people. So waiting for some more. So if you're in, you can get familiar a little bit with you can see on the left side, you have a panel, and the one we're going to use most is the sticky note one. So if everyone, I just made a warm-up exercise so that everyone is familiar with, has all the prerequisite that we need to have today. So if everyone can just write as many posts as you can on the subject food in 2 minutes, starting now. See that it's working. Could be anything. If anyone has problems writing in the post-its, it's just you have to double click on the post-its to start writing. Yes. 10 seconds to go. Okay. So is there someone that didn't manage to make a post-it and need some guidance on that? You can press the N button to create the post-it and then paste it somewhere on the board and start writing. And also there's, as you can see, some people made very large post-its. You can make them smaller by marking it and dragging it to make it smaller. So this looks good. And maybe you've done some little bit warm up now in your brains. So we will continue to the next step. So if you, sorry, if you scroll down, okay. So I will divide you into smaller groups now, and you will get divided into automatically by Zoom into a breakout room. And you will be roughly 5 or 6 people in each room. And the first task you're going to do as a team is to find an empty team board. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see colorful squares. This is your team board. And so the first task is to go to the top left and write all your members in that you will get. Don't do it yet. You will do it when you have your team. So you write all your members in the team board and also come up with a name. And we will just do a test. So this is, I will divide you into groups and find a name and write your team name, your name in under members, and also do a short presentation, maybe 1 minute about yourself. And then I will call you back into the main room. So just do a little test of this so that it's working. Okay, so I will divide you into breakout rooms now. As anyone doesn't know that what we're doing, you can just, it's pretty clear. Okay. So now I will assign you to your room. Okay, so everyone is back now, seems like. Great. So how was this exercise? Was it hard, or it was a bit chaotic in the beginning? But does anyone have any comments?
Yeah, it was a fun exercise. I would say though, if we were a little bit clearer with the time boxes of how long we were supposed to do the individual exercise, the group exercise, because I mean we didn't have a clue, and we didn't get to do the second part in any kind of deep, meaningful way.
Okay.
As a result, but like, yeah, it was definitely like a fun exercise. I feel like it was valuable.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So I will try to be even clearer now with the next part. So now we're gonna cluster some of the post-its. I will show you. So if we look at team 3 here, for example, they made some post-its on enablers and inhibitors. And now we're gonna try to find clusters and form small islands. And from that island, you will put a summary or an insight or a small piece of text that includes this island. So we have an example here. Mikael, you found something here for just an example?
Yeah, maybe in this, if you could just go a little bit closer. Maybe we could have a cluster around reconnecting with nature, or shorten the loop between production and consumption. So we have,
Where are these?
I find a connection here with connecting and experience of nature, along with.
Where are these?
Natural living, maybe. Do you find it?
Yeah. Okay, so we do this, we find one, and then
connecting and experience nature.
Yeah.
This is like on the enablers, and maybe if we should pick inhabitants on the negative side.
You found these two, and is there a third one that we can use to find the cluster? Maybe this one?
Yeah.
And then what you do is put the
So it's forming a type of a cluster with these 3. So if you do this in your group and
so you put
cluster them, reconnecting.
Put the headline over them.
Exactly.
And then you find other post-its and you do the same, put the title or a small sentence or a summary above them. And then you do the same with the inhibitors. So it could be, I don't know what you will find here, but the lack of information and stress is something, headline of personal health, for example. Yeah, I think you get the idea. So you will do that in your in your groups now, and form small islands with the title. Basically.
How long, Carl?
And time boxing.
Yeah, we have 10 minutes for this. And I will, when it's 1 minute, you will get a notification on the Zoom. Okay, as everyone understands? Yep. Yeah.
Yep.
So we breakout rooms. Okay, everyone is back. Great. So we have some minutes to go, but the next task you will do, someone from your team will screen. So we will take each one of these islands or clusters. We will mark everything and we will put them in the factors here, like this. And then we will all have the clusters in the first circle of factors. So if I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to just put all your clusters in the factor circle.
Should we already link them to the right economical, social topic, etc.?
Yes, sorry. Yes, good that you that you mentioned it. So there's a social, economic, there's topics, and if you can find the clusters that match the topic, that would be great.
Yeah, our clusters kind of spread across all of them.
It's okay. It's as long as we get all the notes
okay.
there. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So a quick question. I think all of us have organized what we've done. Should we just copy what we
Yeah.
have and then drag it, or should we just drag the actual notes from where they are? Because then we're going to mess up the work we've already done, maybe.
You can do both. It doesn't matter really. This is the most important to have them in the circle at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, copy could be nice and leave the work as it is on the board, on the group board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So I duplicated the affinity map and dragged it to underneath our box. So we have all of the different sections there. Maybe that's a good way of doing it. So then we can take from the bottom section and leave the what's there.
Yeah, just copy from your
Okay.
group board and leave on the big board.
There's someone that's struggling with copying, then I can help them. Or are we all done?
Maybe just set a time limit. Or
Yeah. So the next step is just 2 minutes, go around the circle and just get a sense of what is each one has written. So just dig in a little bit but have an overview also possible. I'll give you 2 minutes for that. Okay, so we come to the final step of this process. Now you hopefully have gotten a little bit of a sense. You no need to stress if you haven't read all of the post-it notes, but you have a little bit of a shared knowledge here. And from that, you're going to create a called how might we question. This is to focus our scope a little bit more to find a new challenge question. And so in the outer circle, if you find some kind of question or how might we question, you put them in the how might we circle outside. So if you look at some notes and you get a little bit an idea of how might we do this in a different way, or how might we, for example, I see climate change, growing population as a loss of biodiversity, for example. And I can formulate the how might we question this like more in scope with that topic. This is a kind of tricky, I know, but if you need some kind of help, I put some on the right of the circles. You have some info or inspiration how to create the how might we question. If you go to the right of the circle. But this is a time to be a bit creative, but also with the backup of what the body of the work that we've done, basically. So yes, I will give you 7 minutes for this. And I know we're a bit out of time, but if anyone needs to leave, that's okay. But if you want to stay, that's great. We're going only over time with 5 minutes or something. So try to find the nice how might we questions from this in 7 minutes, starting now. All right. See you all started. And we have some really nice contributions now. Like I said before, we're running out of time. We have 5 minutes over time, so feel free to leave if you want, but those that want to stay, it might be 10 minutes more if you have the time. So the next step is to, if you go to the right of the circle, you can see dotmocracy. I will get you all there. You see this dotmocracy thing here? And so how dotmocracy works is that each one of you get 3 dots, and you go around the circle and you read the how might we questions, and the ones that are your favorite, you put a dot there, and maybe you have 2 favorites, put the second dot there, or you have an absolute favorite and you put all 3 dots on one, but you only get 3 dots, remember that. So I will give you 2 minutes or 5 minutes. No, I will give you 3 minutes to do this exercise. So just read through the how might we questions and put the dot where you think is a good one. Okay.
Cool. Should I just read through the mostly voted ones?
Yes, do that.
And feel free to break in if you think I'm unfair. So how might we create a new value system for organic, local, nutrient-dense food through complete
Are we here?
chain?
My point is that it's very difficult to see, because people look the price, but you don't see the whole supply chains, and then there is different. Some people wants to lose weight, some people wants to get more energy from food, some you have a different priorities, but it's not visible because it's separate systems, and so it's very confusing. So this is like, if you could make this to see all the benefits, like in longevity discussions, you sort of many things that they found in the human genes, they could be also true for plants, because we are not so different. So basically you should have this kind of a system, make it easy that you can make it easy for people to make choices.
That's nice. I think we have had some discussions earlier on regarding quality and quantity. So you have to kind of find the sweet spot, considering your context, where you live and how your social areas. So what else? We do have. Is how I don't know if this is on the, I think maybe on this side we have this as how might we link together environmental health and human health. It's a good one. Who would like to say a word or two on this question? How might we? Health is really important, of course, in being resilient.
Maybe I can add on this one. There's if you go back to COVID-19, one of the reasons it's loss of biodiversity in nature, loss of biodiversity, and it has a huge impact on our microbiome own biodiversity, which lead to a lack of immune system or a weak immune system. So as all the loops are linked, and we need to understand, policymakers need to understand that immune system is directly linked to the biodiversity of the food we eat.
It's interesting. It's like some of the core of systems thinking. It's all interlinked. And so what else do we have here? How might we make planet positive farming the default option? It's like, if you've heard of the tragedy of the commons, it's a bit when you externalize your costs. Is that thinking? Who would like to elaborate on this one? It doesn't have to be the one who actually wrote it. Maybe if something just pops into your mind, so please. So I'm pointing at this one. How might we make planet positive farming the default option? So if anyone, the one who wrote it, or anyone else who would like to say a word or two.
Something about kind of positive externalities, isn't it, to farming system, and kind of, I guess, I don't know if I've seen it yet. Regenerative agriculture, people are talking a lot about. There's forms of agriculture that have positive effects on their environment instead of negative ones.
Yeah, we actually me and Carl had a talk the other day regarding whether to say sustainable, because what are we sustaining? Maybe we should lean into being regenerative instead.
Yeah.
I guess this kind of agriculture is maybe integrated into the ecosystem and is kind of working synergistically with it, in the way that some creatures are providing positive externalities, like plants that have seeds and nuts. They just want to get their seeds spread out, but then they have a positive effect on other creatures that come and eat those seeds and spread them for them. So it's kind of those plants are having positive externalities or positive synergies with other creatures. And how do we actually produce crops in a way that have positive synergies instead of like throwing a whole pile of fertilizer on them that runs off into the stream and has negative externalities? How do we create those crops that integrate and work with other things in the ecosystem, external from the production, and has positive effects for them?
Yeah, maybe we get into like carbon capture as well. Capture carbon from the air and capture it in grasslands and so forth. Yeah, interesting. So what else? Should we pick one more just before we?
Sorry, I'm a little bit slow again. Technology, the past
technology.
one. Technology. How might we make planet positive farming the default option? I'm thinking of data. I'm thinking of data which will give a fact evidence that yes, we are moving to a right direction. So the combination between economical and technology progress should be done together, not in a silo. So that was my point. Data and wise use of data.
Well, that's interesting. So you connect the environmental and the farming with the big data or data in general.
Definitely, yeah. You know, researchers all over the world, they are digging out data about biodiversity, about footprint, about CO2, about food, about soil, about carbon. We should use it in a wise way, not in a wrong way, because that is optional also. But of course, that is one possibility, not only, but one.
Yeah, and I think this doing some kind of valuation systems for the full supply chain is kind of requires this that you sort of bring. But in general, it's just if you have a nutrient dense thing and you, even it's a small, you pay more, then you know that you pay for something that is not empty. So that is the thing, that it has to be made easy for consumers or someone to understand the complete value. So that's the big data, I guess, and technology is one drivers probably on this.
Definitely. And retailers and wholesalers, they have already now applications. They can show what kind of food you have bought from the local supermarket. They have indexes, they have way to give your footprint. And that's impressive. And that's possible because they collect all data of our buyings from the supermarket. That is something.
So
can I add something as well?
Please do.
Yeah, this is a very interesting point, and I feel that humans have been observing natural and ecosystems for like thousands of years. But then when we use technology, I feel like it's an artificial layer that is so disconnected from this. So using biomimicry, it's learning from the resilience of our environment and then trying to apply technology to mimic that instead of making us robots. So basically technology is used to make us human again, rather than to make us robots, so disconnected from our environment. And there's so much potential in this, but I don't think it's really being tackled well. So looking at how the environment works and trying to mimic systems using technologies to enhance what the environment does to the world.
Yeah, biomimicry is a really interesting area of knowledge. It's so.
Yeah,
Carl.
but yeah, I agree. But the point is that it's very complex, all these things. So how to make it easy, and you can see it everywhere. That for example, like in healthcare, if you think about longevity, they think that the old age should be like considered like the aging is kind of, if you consider sickness, then you treat tens of sicknesses. But now you just channel money for separate ones. And then when you have a pill for one, then you get another sickness and you never be economically viable or something. So maybe in a food, the similar thing, that to make it simple, enough simple, this complexity for people to understand the whole thing, not just the separate points.
Yeah, this thinking about health it's a bit thinking about upstream and downstream. If you prevent sickness or if you try to cure it, in a sense.
Yeah, but there's like the genetic now knows a lot of things, like you should feel a little bit hardship, a little bit, like hunger, go on things. So thinking of does it mean the same that when you grow organic, so it's full of immunity enhancing stuff, you know. So I never seen in this organic that it's used, but it's very new in humans also. And for example, next year you can have a sickness that it's like old age. So maybe you start to change the whole system when you change this kind of thinking that you don't have to die on a certain age if you just live healthy. And we know how to live healthy, but now we have a proof that it works in a genetic level, and but to bring it in the whole food chain and ecosystem and something. So
I think those are really interesting points. Yeah, essentially, my argument against a lot of the stuff, like whenever I speak to like futurists or whatever, and they're like, we're going to expand people's lifespans by 50 years, 100 years or whatever. It's people are really fundamentally, they're like, whether you can educate them or not, they're really fundamentally often quite self-destructive. And the less hardship people go through, the less, the more like sedentary their lifestyles are, the more inclined they are toward not living healthy lifestyles. So I think Joanna's points were really interesting. They do need some hardship in order for that extended period of time to make sense. Otherwise, they're still going to degrade physically elsewhere anyway. My the other point I wanted to raise was the health thing is an upstream and downstream situation, because it potentially, if you educate people around their health, it could create demand, and therefore it could change the entire system. And then it's whether you're creating healthy produce, which downstream affects people's health as well. So that is actually, it's quite a complicated one, and I mean, there's a few different levels to it. I mean, I think beyond education, the actual practical implications of nutrition count as well.
Yeah.
But like
Sure.
if you think about people are individuals, and you have these glucose meters that if you eat something, you can notice that if you get the spike in your things, that these are coming also for normal people. So that you can yourself find out easily what is good for you, what is bad for you. So I think it's the positive coming things, including nutrition, technology, whatever, individualism. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your thoughts. I think we have run over time now a lot, but thank you very much for those who stayed. And if you want to do a checkout question, then I have a small reflection question. If you go back to the mirror board, you can see what I take with me from today is, and then you can write small post-it notes. And we can view each other's takeaways. And also, if you have some inputs or feedback, you can put them in the feedback box, and you can say, I wish there was more, blah blah blah, and I wonder if stuff. So that's the last thing for this session. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Next time we can hopefully maybe dig a little bit deeper into some of these questions that we found. So
may I ask, what are you going to do with all this information?
We're gonna, if we find like the question, how might we question that got the most votes, maybe we will decide to do another more deeper investigation in that one the next session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough.
We will keep you updated. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I believe it was probably you said you were like new to facilitation or whatever. It was really good. The feedback I would say is, if you're time boxing effectively and just like be very clear what the each exercise is right at the beginning, and then that way people don't get lost. But apart from that, it was really good feedback. Obviously we ran over as well. That was another bit of feedback, but like generally like really good and great job. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right. Take care, everyone.